Well, any journey with Jesus is ultimately a faith journey. That's just how it goes. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence for faith. It's not a blind faith. It's not a faith that's just kind of like a hopeful wish. But the faith that we have in Jesus is based on the reality of who God is, what he's done, and all the things that he's promised to do. And so the faith that we get to have in Jesus, the Son of God, that God would send his Son for us, that God is actually for us, not against us. That God loves us so much that he would make a way, not just any way, a glorious way, a wonderful way, an absolutely perfect way, a way that is available to everyone, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what's been done to you. That kind of way right there. A way that we could have access to connect with our Creator, to know who we are in relationship to the God of creation, to know that we are his child, and to know that we belong. I mean, as you've tried to navigate life, I'm sure you've hit some speed bumps and run into some walls and gotten stuck and been in the ditch and in the ruts and wondered, like, if I can I keep going here? And is it even worth continuing to go? Well, when you get on track with Jesus and you get on track with him and what he's doing, okay, now it's all about next steps of faith. What is my next step of faith? Because every faith journey requires next steps. Now, if we don't take those steps of faith and we push them off, or we try to avoid them, or we think it's too big of a step, well, eventually it can start to feel a little bit overwhelming, and maybe that's you. Maybe you've wound up in a place where you're like, wow, it doesn't feel like a step of faith to me. Honestly, right now, it feels like a leap of faith. Like you got to be one of those long jumpers. You ever seen those people, the track and field long jumper guys? They got to run as fast as they can and then just hurl themselves through the air into a dirt pit. And you may be looking at that going, I'm not sure I can do that. Well, as we're thinking about being on the Soul Train, this is the series we're in, Soul Train. I know you want to say it wherever you are, say Soul Train. Soul Train. No, come on, that's the word soul. Let's say it like we mean it. Soul Train. Yeah. As we get on the Soul Train, we're on track with Jesus and we're taking these next steps of faith. Well, I want you to know that you can actually be like the little engine that could. Remember the little engine that could? I think I can. Okay, I got some issues with the little engine that could. I mean, I'm all for it, and it sounds great in theory, and maybe it's really good for a children's book, but I don't know, maybe you felt like you were the little engine that could. You ever come up to a hill, and you're like, I think I can, and you got like halfway up the hill, and you're like, I don't think I can. And because the reality is, you can't. The hill's too steep. You've run out of steam. There's not enough fuel. You're exhausted. And next thing you know, here you come back down the hill. And we can in our minds start thinking, yeah, faith is all about what I can do, how I can achieve, how I can navigate this life, how I can dominate my world, how I can be all that I can be. And I think I can. I don't want you to do that. I want to change it. Let's flip it. I know he can. I know he can. Try that. Say it. I know he can. All right, now we're on a faith journey. I know he can. Now it's getting hard. I know he can. Now I'm going uphill. I know he can. Now I'm running out of steam. I know he can. But I keep going because I know what? He can. Now that's faith. And there's a difference. That's a faith worth having because you will run out, I will run out, but we know he can because he has done it. Our memory verse for this series, Soul Train, is found in John chapter 3, verse 16, and I'd love for you to read these amazing words of God that are for you, that are for your world, your ones, your friends and family members, neighbors and coworkers, some of the greatest words that God has ever given us. Read this out loud together. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. This is God's message of hope for us. And we know he can. He has done it for us. And so ultimately, we are a people of faith, and we come from a rich tradition of faith. But this is the reality of who we are. If you are a Christ follower, a Christian, then you belong to Jesus, and this relationship is built and established on faith. It begins with faith, it continues with faith, and it ends in faith. But it is a faith in who he is, what he did, and what he promised to do. But we're not the first people of faith. There is a rich tradition in the family of God as God has revealed himself to the world through his people and their worship of him. It has always been about faith. There's a biblical definition of faith found in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. It says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. Now, I'd like to kind of work our way through this in Hebrews 11 and think about what faith is and the faith tradition that we're a part of and how we are a people of faith, a family of faith, where we interact and connect with God through faith and steps of faith, not in ourselves, but in him, who he is, what he did, and what he promised to do. Now, faith is confidence. Now, I like this, confidence. Faith is confidence in what we hope for. Now, I want you to wrestle with this. Sometimes we can lose faith and our faith doesn't feel very strong. And we actually even start referring to faith in terms of strong faith or big faith. I have a lot of faith. And I hear terms like, I've actually had people come up to me and they want to get my attention and they go, no, I'm a big time faith person. And I'm like, why are you telling me? Now, I mean, I'm already like, oh, okay, weirdo alert. This is going to be icky, Like, who identifies themselves that way? Like, if you have faith, and really in my life, I've really been focusing on not a big, ginormous faith, but a small faith. A faith that has merit and density, a faith that is useful, a faith that is based on very few things, the reality of who Jesus is, the reality that God is for us, the reality that Jesus has come and died for us and made a way, the reality that it's his will that none would perish, but everyone would know him, the reality that he is for all of my ones and he wants to love people through me, the reality that when we pray for one, as one church, and we ask God, please give me one person to share your love with. I put some faith in this. That this is a big, bold prayer of faith that when we pray it communally and we ask God, please give me one person to share your love with. I have faith that God will do that. That is not a prayer that I offer up to him going, eh. In fact, we don't just talk about it, we actually do it. The prayer goes like this: God, please give me one person to share your love with. Would you pray that big, bold prayer of faith with me? God, please give me one person to share your love with. Remember that it's his love. It's not about my love. My love is fleeting and fading and temporary and conditional and transactional, but his love is everlasting and his love is perfect and his love is powerful and his love never fails. I know he can. I know he can. And when we pray for one, then we can pray in faith that God will pour his love into us because he promises this. He promises his love. He says, I will lavish my love on you. He says, I will give you my love without limit. He says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. He will not turn his back on you. He gives us his perfect, unending, sacrificial, merciful, grace-filled love, and he fills us to a measure of all fullness so that his love moves through us to everyone. Yes, our someones, those specific names that he lays on our hearts. Your spouse, your children, your siblings, your parents, your neighbors, your coworkers and classmates, your clients, the people that we're encountering in this world. They are objects of God's love that now moves through us. And when we look at people as objects of God's love, now we can have a real faith because we know he can. And so if you have somebody in your life right now that is hard to love, and if you can't think of anybody, somebody's thinking of you. That's truth right there. There can be, I love this about God. He is his love for the unlovely. People like me. We don't deserve it. We don't earn it. And I know I can be so hard to be around and so difficult. And yet here's this perfect God who says, no, I will love you perfectly. And he loves the unlovely like me. And then he sets me free to love the unlovely, which isn't easy. And if you're thinking, yeah, I think I can do that. The unlovable are unlovable for a reason. But I know he can. I know he can. When you don't want to love your spouse, you say this, I know he can. When you don't want to love your neighbor anymore, you say, I know he can. When you don't want to love that client or that coworker or that classmate, what do you say? I know he can. And that's faith. Faith in what we hope for. Confidence in what we hope for. An assurance of what we do not see. See, here's the thing, is sometimes we think, well, I'm going to pray for one, and it's like a magic formula, like it's some kind of spell, and we're casting witchcraft, on God, like iggity bobbity boo. Abracadabra, God, if I rub you just the right way, I'll get my way. No. This is about his way. Submitting ourselves to him and what he wants to do. And so sometimes we think, well, I'm going to pray for one, and he's going to change people. These people that are so hard to love, he's going to make them more lovable so that it'll be easier for me to love. Which is why sometimes when I say, think of the last person on earth you would want to share God's love with. Just do it. Whoever you got in your head, that's your one. Okay? God's given you this person because he can. And you want to talk about the transformative power of God and how he can change you and me and his love move through us. This prayer, for one thing, isn't about changing people. It's about God transforming us from the inside out. I promise you he will do that. We don't control how other people respond to God's love. We can't make them say yes to Jesus, nor would we want to. But we can introduce them to Jesus. We can introduce them to his love, what it looks like coming through us in our words and our actions. We can demonstrate and show the love of God to people, and they can have an opportunity and freedom to respond. But I guarantee you he will change you as you pray for one. And his love never fails. And then what we can't see is everything that he's doing. He's connecting us to the mission of Jesus, to live for him and to share his love, to be sacrificial, to be generous, to lay down our lives and take up our crosses and follow him, to be about his mission to save the world. And more people are connecting to God, and people are being saved. And this is assurance about what we don't always see. And I promise you, if it's based on your ability to love really well, you're going to run out of steam. But if it's based on him, who he is, what he promised to do, and what he's done, now we have hope and assurance. Confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. And it said this is what the ancients were commended for. Now in Hebrews 11, it actually goes through like a rundown of the history of Israel. It's pretty cool. You can read the whole chapter, but it's like an Old Testament summary real fast about, how God formed the universe, how everything was created by divine command, that God spoke and it was. In the beginning, God spoke and it was. And that the Word is what created everything and brought everything into being, that he has authority as the creator then over his creation. It talks about how Noah, by faith, built an ark. That what God wanted to do was he wanted to demonstrate his love in this way, to say, all right, here's my love. I don't want people to continue living this way, hurting each other and destroying each other. And so he saves a remnant and says, this is who I am. I'm not creating people to harm one another, but I'm creating people to love one another. And Noah built an ark by faith. And God saved a remnant so his story would continue. Then there's this guy named Abraham. His name was Abram before God changed it to Abraham. And Abraham's just minding his own business. He's got a good family dynamic thing happening. He's got protection. People are moving into cities and civilization. And then this voice just says, Abram, I want you to go to a land I will show you. And even though you have no children, I will give you descendants that will outnumber the stars in the sky and the sand on the shore. That's all he had, was a voice that said, hey, leave everything you know and go out in the middle of nowhere. And by faith, Abram, even in his old age with his old wife Sarah, they left. And they received the child Isaac, the child of promise. But then by faith, Abram took Isaac and he climbed up a mountain when God said, I want you to sacrifice your son. By faith, he believed in God, in the voice of God. And God provided. And this is a faith journey that we've been on straight through Moses, his parents putting him in a basket and floating him down the Nile so that he wouldn't be put to death. And then Moses leaving his flocks and returning to Egypt where he was wanted for murder and leading the Israelite people out of Egyptian captivity. And the Israelite people then crossing the Red Sea. You want to talk about faith? You got walls of water on both sides and this guy going, hey, let's go. That's steps of faith. I might have been like, no. I just want to know who went first. Somebody had to go first. Those are steps of faith. And this is the faith tradition that we are a part of. And then when it came time to receive the promised land, they crossed the Jordan River and they came to the city of Jericho with its fortified walls. And by faith, they didn't attack it by faith. What they did was they marched around it. And then they blew their trumpets and shouted. And through worship, the walls came down. And I know, and I believe, and I have faith, and I know He can, that when we worship, God is making Himself known. When we sing, He is making Himself known. When we exalt Him in worship by obeying Him in our lives, He is making Himself known. When we share His love, He is making Himself known. And we are a people of faith. And so as people of faith, we are challenged to keep the faith, to keep it, to hold fast to it. Now, part of keeping the faith is making sure you have the right faith. This is a big deal. But have faith in Jesus, who He is, what He did, and what He promised to do. It's not faith in ourselves. It's not faith in our government. It's not faith in our economy. It's not faith in that we won't get sick or we won't have any relational issues. No, this is faith in who God is, what He's done, and what He's promised to do. But now we're stewards of that faith. We come from a rich tradition of faith that has been handed down to us, and now we're in a position to express faith like no other people in the history of the world have ever been in a position to do. That's why when sometimes people are like, well, I'd believe if I could just go back to Bible times. I'm not sure you would. I believe we have more evidence today that points to Jesus than we've ever had before. Not only we have the ancient history of people like Abraham and Moses and Noah, but now we have 2,000 years of church history. We have the words of God put together in the Bible, prepared, preserved, and presented to us in a language that we can understand. And we have access to it. We have the opportunity and freedom to worship like never before. We have the ability to share God's love through technology and transportation and the ways that we communicate with people like never before. We have access to information where we can ask questions and research and dig in and wrestle with things like never before. And we are stewards of this faith. We're to keep the faith. And so as we continue looking into Hebrews, we move into Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. It says, therefore, after it gives the whole rundown of our faith tradition, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Now, right here in this passage, we see, okay, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. Okay, so since we are surrounded by all this evidence and this great cloud of witnesses and all the information, all right, now we're entrusted with this faith. So let's make sure that we throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Now, there's some faith killers. The most obvious faith killer is misplaced hope. If we put our hope in the wrong thing, if we put our hope in, I think I can, that's a faith killer right there, because you're going to run out of steam. You're going to run out of energy. You're going to reach your limit, and you're not going to be able to go any further. And so we put our faith in Him. I know He can. And so misplaced hope is the number one faith killer. If we start to attribute things to Jesus that He never promised us, then we're going to be awfully disappointed when they don't happen. That's why I never, in the history of One Church and all the things I've asked you to do, I've never said, oh, hey, you know what, this season right now, we're going to stop praying for one person to share God's love with, and everybody just pray that one of us wins the lottery. We're not doing that. Because, like when you pray that prayer, if you've prayed that prayer, come on, most people have prayed it. Lord, please just let me win the lottery. You know what God says? No. You know why he says no? Because he loves you. And if you won the lottery, you'd be a moron with it. And you'd do damage with it. You'd hurt yourself and your family. And I would. We know this. And so God's not going to do that. He's not cursing us with that. He's blessing us. But when we pray for one, okay, now he does promise that he'll fill us with his love. His love will move through us to people. We'll connect to mission and life with purpose, where we know that we're investing in eternity and we're a part of his kingdom, and our work matters and it is producing fruit like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And we're reaching the most people in the shortest time. Okay, now this is faith. Put your hope in that. But if we put our hope in, this kind of pain-free existence stuff, there'll be no issues, there'll be no problems, there'll be no hardships, there'll be no difficulties, you're going to be really disappointed, and it kills faith. We start thinking, I think I can, instead of I know he can. Another faith killer is bad vision. Are you sure of what you see? This assurance of what we do not see, but sometimes we start looking in the wrong place. We take our eyes off of Jesus and we start to pursue other things. If we're taking steps of faith, let's make sure that we're taking steps of faith with Jesus, towards Jesus, and about his kingdom, not towards building our own kingdoms. Distractions are another faith killer. When we start to give our lives to things that are temporary instead of the eternal things of God. It's hard to stay on track with him and be about what he's about when we start to desire and want things that may be contrary to what he's doing. Sin is a faith killer. A working definition of sin is anything we do that we know God doesn't want us to do, or anything we neglect to do that we know God does want us to do. And when we get entangled in sin, that's the way sin works. It wraps us up, it ties us up. And as we get entangled with it, then it begins to dominate and control us. Sin is never satisfied. It needs more. And it's never enough. And we continue down that path, but Jesus came and set us free from sin, where we can trust that his commands are truly for us, not against us. And then I think maybe one of the most important ones to identify is running the wrong race. Run with perseverance the race that's marked out for us. You can get caught up in the rat race. You can get caught up in keeping up with somebody else. You can get caught up with comparison. You can get caught up with the expectations of your family dynamic. You can get caught up with your family of origin and the things that have been placed on you. You can get caught up in trying to please everybody, or you can get caught up in trying to be someone and build your own kingdom. No, you were created by God in the image of God to be a part of his family and in his business, and to run with perseverance, to get after it and go after it because we know he can. And that's when it gets really fun. When you're running the right race with Jesus and you know he can, now you're free to run and run hard and run fast and not run out of steam. And so we keep the faith. We're stewards of the faith. We're responsible for it. And the best way to steward your faith is to live your faith. Live it out. You are anyway, I promise you. What do I mean by that? Your life is actually a reflection of your faith. Look at how you spend your time. It will reveal where your faith is. Look at how you spend your resources. It will reveal where your faith is. Look at how you love people in your relationships. It will reveal where your faith is. We're all living our faith anyway, but if you have a faith in Jesus, then live that faith out. Now that's life on mission. That's life with purpose. That is the abundant, joy-filled, Christ-centered, faith-stepping, I know he can life in Jesus. Can we get a woo-hoo there? And so the next verse of Hebrews 12, verse 2 says, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Well, this is our glorious hope. It is found in Jesus. We fix our eyes on Jesus. We're a people of faith, and this is what the ancients were commended for. But now we see the fulfillment and the fullness of faith in the person of Jesus, who came and died, and get this, rose again. Woo-hoo! He is the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the Father. And so we consider him, and we know he can because he has done it. He has done it. And this is not a shaky faith. This is not a shaky hope. This is solid and firm and real. And while you still may have questions and you may still have doubts and your mind may be about to explode, somewhere inside of you there is something going, that's it. I know that's it. And that is faith. And you can't shake it. Even if you want to, you can't shake it. And unless you take that next step of faith, you're going to be miserable. Consider him who endured opposition all the way to the cross, laying down his life for you. Think about him. You know he can. And what he is calling you to is a life of walking with him and following him. And yeah, sometimes it'll be like a walk through a park on a warm summer day where everything feels just right and everything is hunky-dory and the walk is easy and your burden is light and your heart is full. But then there's going to be other days where it's like a steep mountain climb across a treacherous pass, and there is trouble on every side, and you're looking at it going, there is no way I can do this. And you're going to say, I can't do this, but I know he can. Amen. And that is the life he's inviting you to. I know he can. He has done it. And so when we share in communion together, this is where we remember what he has done and what he's inviting us into. Jesus took bread. As he dined with his friends, he took bread, and what he was giving us was a reminder that as often as we eat, the very sustenance of life, he was saying, I am your life. I am what you need. I am your hope. I am your fulfillment. I am your provision. And he broke it. And he offered it to them. He said, this is my body given to you. If you know he can, then let's take and eat together. And he took the cup. And he said, this cup represents the blood of a new covenant. A new relationship that comes through Jesus, the fulfillment of this faith tradition that we're now a part of. We have seen it in him, and now we share it in him. And he offers the cup to you, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what's been done to you, no matter what anybody's ever said about you. God is for you, and he offers himself to you. And so you're invited to drink, and if you're drinking, then we drink to the King. So right now, I encourage you to ask God, show me what to do and give me courage to do it. Maybe there's something you've been going, I think I can, but you really know you can't? Do you know he can? Right now, wherever you are, will you just pray and say, God, show me what you want me to do. Show me what you want me to do. And when he does, you say to him, I know you can. Father, show us what to do and help us to declare to you, we know you